I'm your host, Matt Toll, and welcome to Holistically Speaking. Today we are going to be joined with Morella Devost, and she is a hypnotherapist as well as a nutritionist. And we're going to be talking about her practice, how she integrates that into her work, and how other people gain benefits from that kind of work. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
Nice. And so I really want to jump right into it and ask you a little bit about why nutrition, why hypnotherapy, and like how did that fit into your life as far as like your own personal journey?
Yeah, why? Well, that's a great way to get started and to frame the question, because it really was through my own quest for health that I got started on this journey. I never thought of nutrition as an avenue that I would pursue. I always thought the word nutrition was like, ugh, that's so dry, that's so boring. Okay. But it was really in my mid-20s I realized I had horrific acne. I was overweight. I was depressed. I had chronic allergies that had been getting worse since my teenage years. I had asthma. I was miserable. And I was also in kind of a place in my life that I was not very happy. And what was given to me medically, and I had hormone issues too, and what was given to me medically wasn't working. And so finally one day I stopped everything I was taking, and I thought there must be a way that I can help my body heal. And I started picking up books and all of that, and that's how I ended up finding my way through nutrition school, healing my body, clearing my skin, managing my hormones. And also along the way I studied counseling, and so I did a little family therapy and realized that where I really wanted to be was helping people be healthier and happier through what they ate, what they thought about, looking at their emotions. So bringing the counseling in and the nutrition is like everything that I had done for myself, and helping people kind of achieve the same.
That's great. And so how did hypnotherapy come into that? Was that sort of like alongside the
you know, it was, because when I was studying counseling, I was very curious about hypnosis. And I actually took a class where we just kind of tangentially talked about hypnosis. But then when I already, years later, after already having my private practice in nutrition, I started doing like these little guided relaxation meditations for my clients, and they always said, "Oh, you have such a wonderful voice for that. That was so relaxed. You should think of doing this more." And then my sister and I found a school for hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, and we did that. So I added that more actively to my practice.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So did you go through a certification process? Was it just you sort of, how did that work out for you in implementing it into your practice?
Well, both schools that I attended, both the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and Bennett Steller University for Hypnosis, this was after I had gotten my master's in counseling in New York at Columbia, but both of the schools from which I gained the majority of the tools that I use in my practice are very much like, here are the tools, start practice. You know, they're kind of like active internship kind of schools, and really kind of empowering you to use your skills as they coach you and, you know, kind of supervise you. So they're not really traditional schools, and the whole like, you know, boards and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I still get a sense, and I think the viewers still get a sense of like the process you went through. So thanks. I also kind of wanted to talk about how you apply this to like with other people, and how you integrate that into, you know, your practice.
Well, I work with people in a variety of ways. I have an office where I meet with people one-on-one. So with them, you know, I have clients who come to work with me for acne, you know, or high cholesterol, or, you know, they just want help with their nutrition, or they want to lose a little weight, that sort of thing. But I love working with groups, and I love teaching workshops. Okay. And so I have a few group programs that I facilitate, and those are mostly remotely. So I actually have people participating in my groups from Colorado or Venezuela or, you know, New York City. So I have, you know, people joining the groups over the phone.
Yeah,
it's over the phone. It's a conference call. So, for example, I've been doing 4-week detox program for the last 5 years, and it's always over the phone. And so we meet on the phone, and we talk about what we're doing that week, how the detox is progressing, and give coach everybody, support everybody with whatever challenges they're having. So that's another one of the formats in which I work. I also have a group program like that for natural cholesterol management, all through food.
I want to interrupt just for a second.
Yes.
You brought up a couple things that I wanted to talk about. One of which is you do a detox program.
Yes.
I would love to maybe take a couple minutes to talk about that, because I am so curious about how you go about doing your detox program. It's, I mean, is it just for detoxing from substances, or is it?
Yeah, from all substances, including the food substances that we shouldn't be eating.
Got it.
I fell into detoxification because of my skin years ago. So the first cleanse that I did was probably, I don't know, maybe 9 years ago, because I was just really desperate to find something that would help me clear my skin. And I started doing a lot of research and just testing on myself.
Yeah.
And then about 6 years ago, a friend of mine in New York City got super sick doing a lemonade cleanse that's pretty pretty popular.
Yeah.
And so I helped her, and I said, that's not the best way to jump into massive detoxification of your body, and that can really mess you up in other ways if you have blood sugar issues or whatever. So I created a really gradual program that gets people eliminating the things that are highly toxic to them, everything from chemicals and alcohol and the foods that are really congesting, and then a second week where we're getting to whole foods, and then a third week where it's much more intensively cleansing, focusing on your liver, cleaning out your colon, giving your body the nutrients that are going to help it clear out the stuff, the sludge. Okay. And then the fourth week is kind of reintegrating, and then how do you keep going after that? And so it's all food-based, and it is for, the average Joe. It's not just for people who, have substance issues.
Yeah.
Although sugar can be
it's
a big issue.
Sugar can be. Okay.
Yeah.
So I get a pretty good idea of how the detoxification process works. Why 4 weeks, though? Why does it have to be that long?
Well, a lot of times, first of all, so that you can go gently, especially kind of weaning people off. Say, for instance, caffeine. People start to wean off caffeine, and then they get a headache. So, you can go gently and, not have it be so harsh. But then the other part of it is when you have sensitivities and foods like, dairy and grains, particularly wheat, can be, pretty inflammatory for some people and have some really severe effects in some cases. When you eliminate them for at least a couple weeks, and then you reintroduce them one at a time, then you can have a really clear observation of how that food is affecting you. And so oftentimes people find that at the end of the third week, I've had examples of people saying, oh my gosh, I walked to my mailbox this morning, which is a quarter of a mile, and I realized my knees aren't hurting. And I haven't had my knees not hurt in years. Or my gas is gone,
Yeah.
And now I realize that it's been gone. And then say, the next week when it's reintegration week, they add milk again, and then some of the symptoms start to come back. And then they realize, oh, my relationship with this food needs to be slightly different. And, just picking on a couple of the usual suspects. But
yeah, no, that makes sense. What are some of the usual suspects? So you said grain?
Well, dairy, sugar, of course.
Yeah.
People notice how sugar affects their moods, how they start to feel a lot more serene, and then they add it again, and they notice how they get jittery or... dairy, sugar, grains actually in general, for some people can be, triggers for kind of digestive things, especially wheat, and the gluten grains. For some people, say, who have arthritis, foods in the nightshade groups like tomatoes and potatoes and eggplant and peppers can be inflammatory. So for them, we might eliminate those a little bit. and then reintroduce them a couple weeks later, and they can see how things shift.
Okay.
You know, then, and there are other examples.
Yeah, no, that was good. So then I sort of, as you were talking, I brought this connection with hypnotherapy and detox, and I was wondering, do you ever fuse the two? Because
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I don't know, because I was thinking, you know, if you're going through stuff and you go through the detox, and after you get through the detox, well, what's to say you're not going to turn around and walk the other way?
Yeah, well, that is really why my practice is so integrated, because you know, like I tell people, you're not eating Ben and Jerry's at 11:30 at night because you're hungry.
Yeah.
You know, there are other reasons why you reach for the cookies or you have these comfort foods, and that's what I call heart hunger.
Yeah.
And there's also, you know, we have really entrenched, ingrained habits that are really hard to break, and that's where the hypnosis comes in.
Yeah.
So, you know, neurolinguistic programming has really great, like, little, almost awake hypnosis, like little techniques to help people shift their stuck behaviors, their stuck patterns, and so hypnosis can be great for that. I also use hypnosis for things like smoking cessation and, you know, that sort of thing that's more classically more hypnosis than really food related. But
yeah, sure. How difficult is it for someone to practice that themselves? Does it require another individual to do hypnosis, or is that a one-on-one thing?
That's a great question. Once you learn how to hypnotize, you can hypnotize yourself, and there's actually books about this. You can read how to, you know, kind of put yourself into a little bit of a trance, and because contrary to what people think about hypnosis, you're not unconscious or you're not gone. You're in hypnosis for the most part. You're always aware of what's happening, and people are there because they want to be there and because they want change, and so but nothing really ever happens in hypnosis that you don't want to happen. So when you're trying to working to hypnotize yourself, you're very conscious of what you're doing, you're aware of what you're saying to yourself and why you're saying it to yourself, and it actually does work.
Could I'm just going to ask, would it be very similar to maybe mindfulness or intentionality?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Would you say that they play together, or that they're in the same boat?
Well, you know, when you're practicing hypnosis for yourself, you are essentially being very mindful and having a lot of intention in what you're saying and why you're saying the things you're saying to yourself.
Nice. I personally think that that's extraordinarily helpful for me, because sometimes I have unconscious thoughts that come in, and it could be like, oh, I really want to have that piece of food, and I don't have the money for it or something like that. And I being intentional and mindful about, well, I don't need it, it's not necessary, or, you know, I can spend my money on something else. I think now I just do that automatically. I'll walk past a bakery shop, be like, well, I'll get to you sometime. You know what I mean?
Good.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thanks. So is there anything else that you would like to cover as far as nutrition, or the fusion of nutrition and hypnotherapy, or hypnotherapy?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that in general, the reason why I love the work that I do, and it's so satisfying to me, is that I have come to experience for myself to the degree to which we can create our health through our food and our thoughts.
Okay.
And being mindful of, you know, what we're thinking, how we're feeling. And so I think I'm on a little bit of a quest to help people realize that the body heals itself. Mm-hmm. You know, if you ever healed from anything, it's the body doing it, you know. And so food is essentially the chemistry with which the body does it. You know, every single cell in your body was made from the food that we ate. Mm-hmm. And so everything, you know, this is why I'm loving my cholesterol management work, because people are so, you know, in general, we're so used to thinking, oh, what's the pill that I need to take for that? And there isn't much that I can do for cholesterol other than, you know, cut back on my fats and take a statin drug, and that's not true. It's incredible how quickly the body responds to, you know, 10 to eating the right foods for cholesterol. And it's not about eating low fat. And so,
Do you mind if I interject for
yes,
a second?
Please.
Because
yeah.
I don't really know that much about cholesterol. I actually thought exactly what you just said. I thought if my cholesterol is high that I would just not stop eating fats.
Right.
And hopefully it would get better. And you're saying it's different than that.
It is different than that. And, you know, one of my greatest gurus for that, and actually I didn't list it in the resources that we'll share at the end, but I'll mention it, is actually a cardiologist. His name is Ron Rosedale, and he has a phenomenal website by his name, Dr. Ron Rosedale. And he has been my hero in helping educate people about how cholesterol is related to inflammation. And so really what you want to do for cholesterol is eat more of the foods that help to lower inflammation.
Okay, so eat foods that lower inflammation?
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can guess. Food that lowers beets.
Beets could be good.
Okay. Leafy greens?
Leafy greens are better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a food that's better than leafy greens?
No, leafy greens are up there, especially because of their chlorophyll. And beets are great because of also the rich pigments. One of the greatest anti-inflammatory foods or nutrient, I'll call it, are omega-3s, which is why when you think about, you know, people think, well, eating fish is better than meat. It's like, yeah, especially because of the omega-3s from the inflammation perspective. And so other anti-inflammatory foods, garlic and spices like turmeric. Turmeric is incredible for lowering inflammation.
Really?
And that's the spice that makes curry bright yellow.
Yeah, no, and mustard actually is made out of turmeric.
And mustard, yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's really neat. So have you ever worked with anybody or had any sort of personal experiences with people that have been able to clear away very serious medical conditions?
Yes.
And what is that process? How does it look? What does it feel like? Do they feel like an internal, like, oh, my heart feels better? Yeah. Or like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, well, two examples pop to mind, and I love both of them because one was a 72-year-old man who had diabetes and was taking medication. And the other one is a recent client in my cholesterol program who's in her 60s, a woman. And the reason why I love them both is because usually people, the older they get, they're like, oh, I'm just old, you know, I'm not going to be able to lose weight, you know, this is just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
So my diabetes gentleman, he was so excited because he was monitoring his blood sugar and he was, you know, decreasing the amount of his medication and always working with his doctor. I would say, you know, talk to your doctor, this is what we're doing, but... So decreasing his medication, and he started getting so excited that he talked to his wife, and at the end of his program, when he was completely off of his medication, technically not a diabetic anymore, they went on a road trip and like a second honeymoon because he was like feeling so full of life. And the other one, this woman who was in my cholesterol program just now, in her 60s, you know, postmenopausal, again, women after menopause feel like their bodies just don't respond as much. And she lost like 15 pounds, a couple pant sizes, was doing sprints on the treadmill and managing her cholesterol naturally. Her whole outlook changed. And she enrolled in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is where I went. She was like, you've changed my life. And so it was just incredible.
Oh, that's
you know,
good.
Again, it goes way beyond food. It's like when you start to realize my body does respond, I do get healthier, and you know, your outlook gets better.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you work with people on consistency? Because that's one of the things that I think would be really, really challenging for me. Probably less so with food. Other things I think it's harder for me, but because just personally I have a different relationship with food. But yeah, how do you address that with individuals? It probably goes back to the counseling, but maybe there's something else you do because, anyway.
Well, and, you know, that might be, if there's a lack of consistency in someone, that might be where some of the coaching tools, the neurolinguistic programming or hypnosis can be really handy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know that this is what you want to do, you know that this is what you need to do, and you're not doing it. And we met a couple weeks ago and you said you were going to do these things. So we might look at it as what's the part of you that's sabotaging yourself? You know, what's the other benefit that you seem to be getting in the other behavior that you're choosing? How can we get more of that benefit in a different way?
Yeah.
And shifting, you know, still keeping the benefit, because obviously everything that we do is positively motivated, even if the outcome is poor. So if we're eating the Ben and Jerry's at night, you know, the outcome might not be great, but it's usually because we want comfort, or we want, you know, maybe we're lonely or whatever, you know. So let's look at what's the positive motivation that's driving that, and how can we create that in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's one way in which we, you know, look at consistency. And the other piece, obviously, is that whether I'm working with them one-on-one, we usually meet every other week for, you know, maybe 3 months, maybe a little bit more, depending on what we're working on.
Yeah.
So it keeps people saying, oh, I'm going to see her in a couple weeks, and I said I was going to do these 3 things. Same thing with the group coaching programs. You know, they're going to meet with a group and they're going to report, you know, how are they doing?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a beauty of being witnessed by a coach, or having that, even if it's a buddy, you know. When you say you're going to show up to the gym with a buddy, people are more likely to show up than if they just say, okay, New Year's resolution, I'm going to start going to the gym.
Oh, that's nice. Have you ever had anybody call you up, like in a time where they're sort of going to make a decision? They're like, oh, I'm thinking about eating this kind of food, and I'm not really sure. Does that happen to you, or no?
At the grocery store, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
No, I mean, that's a reasonable place to sit. Yeah.
I make myself available, or like, you know, the text messages from the grocery store.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which rice should I get?
Or pictures of labels. They'll send me pictures of labels. What do you think of this one? Yeah, that sort of thing.
That's good. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your practice with nutrition, how you go about it with other individuals, a little bit about your life story, and then the hypnotherapy. Was there something else?
I did miss one piece.
Okay, what was it?
Well, that the other format in which I work with people is I also teach workshops in companies.
Oh, yeah.
And,
okay.
you know, out there. So, you know, just like trying to get on as many soapboxes as I can get to, you know, share with people as much as I can about, you know, food really does matter. So anyway, that was just the thing.
No, that's good. And do you find that when you're at companies that there's more of a response from certain companies, more of a response from certain individuals in companies, less response? Like, what do you see?
Well, it really has a lot to do with the culture of a company. You know, there's some businesses that, you know, they have a gym, and, you know, they have a cafeteria, and they're buying organic food for their cafeteria, and those companies are really open, and they attract a certain kind of people. And then there are other companies where they're like, no, we're paying for their health insurance already, and they get vacation, so we're not going to bring you to. So it definitely does vary a lot. But what's interesting is that there's been a really there's been a great growing trend of businesses realizing that those who've been, you know, the trendsetters and investing in their employees' health and well-being are seeing an incredible return. Not just because their people are healthier, but they're more engaged. They're like, wow, this company really cares about me, and you know, they show up. So
I would say that's actually very valuable because of the work that I do outside of this, and we try very hard to invest in the health of the employees that we work with and the employers that we're working for, and it's a really nice relationship because I feel as an employee that I'm very valued.
Right.
And it's probably the same when you go in and somebody, you know, is sitting down and being like, oh, I haven't really thought about my nutrition and I'm thinking about it at work.
Right.
It can be a nice place to talk about it. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of time to put up some resources that you've provided for us. And so we'll get those up there. And if you could go through and give us a little
So those are my website and the Integrated Nutrition, the school where I attended, Mercola.com is a phenomenal resource. He does almost a daily newsletter, and this is a doctor who does a lot of, he reviews research, and he believes 100% in food as the best source of healing. So he's just an incredible doctor to follow. And then these books by Michael Pollan, The Omnivore's Dilemma, Food Rules, he's written a few others. They're all about helping people kind of awaken to the reality of the food supply. The Omnivore's Dilemma is a delicious read. It's just really, really fun. I highly recommend it. I say anybody who eats food in the U.S. needs to read The Omnivore's Dilemma. Mark David was a professor at my school, and he is also a psychologist, and the Slow Down Diet is all about awareness and eating with awareness and the importance of pleasure and really enjoying your food. And John Douillard is, he practices Ayurveda, and the 3-season diet is about understanding how to eat with the flow of the seasons, why we should be eating differently in the winter than we should be eating in the summer, and how that affects our health.
Yeah.
So those are just different books that I think are all great reads.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing those. I really appreciate it.
And then there's some films. All of these, some have gotten a lot of press. Food Inc., The Future of Food, King Corn, and all of these are great documentaries that help to shed light on our food supply.
Yeah.
Food Inc. is probably my favorite, and King Corn does also a great job of showing how much corn we have in our food supply, and some of the issues behind the way that corn is grown massively in our country. And Fast Food Nation is more of a drama. It's like taking all of the documentaries above and turning them into a story. So that, it's kind of a different taste.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. So I think that's a great way to sort of wrap up. So you've got a little bit of time. Is there any last remaining remarks that you want to say? Any more information that you want to, present to the public?
Yeah, in like a minute.
Yeah, about a minute. Yeah.
Well, I think ultimately really is that the body heals itself. And when you give your body what it needs, it's just, it responds incredibly quickly, and eliminating, the other thing we didn't talk so much about is, the importance of detoxification. And there's just so much in our environment that is weighing on our body, in our air and the water, and just choosing to get information and be the stewards of our bodies, because ultimately we're the ones who need to choose what we eat. And
I'm guessing that there's probably a lot of different, information, a lot of different things that toxins that we need to detoxify from. So maybe it could be a little bit scary, but you don't seem to come from a place of fear. It seems that you're coming from a place of hope. How is that?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, no, really.
There is a lot that we can do.
Yeah.
And our health is really in our hands, but we need to make that choice to, like I said, be the stewards of our bodies so that we can choose what we eat and what we drink, and what chemicals we clear out of our house and out of our plates.
Oh, that's great.
So that's ultimately what I'm about.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in. I'm sure me and everybody else that's going to be watching it really, really appreciates all the information that you've given. And the resources you provided, also great. I've seen a couple of those films and read some different books from similar authors, or the same author. And so thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Awesome. So join us again next week when we return with a new guest, and we'll find out who that is. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you later.